services are collapsing. And there are new ways to sell films. A distributor will point a gun barrel at the back of your head and tell you to shut up. The filmmakers realize they're holding the deck of cards. There's going to be a shift.
Delving into the independent filmmaking world and the corrupt landscape of distribution, to understand you, you don't want to use your name. Why is that?
A lot of what I'm saying could put me at risk.
Would you say that it would be dangerous for you to use your name or to give your identity?
Well, I'm not really here about me. I'm just here kind of exposing the story of what's going on in the industry. I'm not really comfortable giving my name out.
Let's start with your first feature film. What were your experiences?
I got into film in the late 80s, early 90s. I picked up a camera and started making films. I would just get into it and start producing hobby type films, and I got into it with a passion. So I wanted to produce, direct, try to do anything I could with visual effects, and just started shooting for fun, and it was a great adventure to go through at that time.
Okay, I get that. I think a lot of people would understand wanting to come into it from a side of passion. What were some of the hurdles in production that you experienced?
So I started noticing early on I wasn't really into, distribution. I just figured you make a film and then you get it out there. Late 80s, early 90s, you didn't have the internet. But again, it was still kind of a hobby and fresh to me. And you were basically learning as you go. Distribution was very basic. So the landscape of distribution was simpler back then, more complicated now. And while I think there has always been a scam nature to the business, it's this kind of self-destruction of filmmaking in an oversaturated market.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Were there signs of change in the filmmaking landscape at that time, or was that more of a recent experience?
The changes are drastic. Look, we've got so many streaming channels, and they're all trying to hit a quota, and that is just content. Your distributors really, most of them are not even going to watch the film. If it seems like it'll sell, they'll pick it up for no money down. The risk is all on the filmmaker. We have filmmakers that kind of buy into that old philosophy where people shop their movies on a credit card or put their homes on a second mortgage to create a feature to get their budget, or get investors involved making numbers to think that they're going to make millions of dollars back, which is not the case. Right now it's a free-for-all.
Okay, and so it changed drastically since then?
This is where it gets real creative. The contracts mostly are creative and set up for a one-way road, and that road works for the reps, the aggregates, the distributors. They know exactly the game. It is a game, but there's no respect to the filmmaker anymore, and if there is, it's under false pretenses. Distributors will not care about the film, or not just as much as to pick it up because they know that genre will sell, so they start playing the game. The contract game is this creative contract that does not play in the new world of this distribution model that exists today. It's going to be a rough ride for filmmakers, especially if you haven't been in it. It's a pretty corrupt business.
How do you feel that distribution companies have abused that?
If I step back and think about this, there's a lot of film markets out there. One really popular one is called the American film market. That's where they buy and sell and trade films. This is companies from all over the world. And just recently, the numbers have been so bad in attendance because of the oversaturation of the market and the falling numbers, dwindling numbers across the board for small films and big films. It's just not what it used to be. The golden age of those times are pretty much gone. So now it's penny pinching and seeing what will sell, and you'll have a gem here and there, but there are far and few that will do that. They're really not even thinking about films as much as the business. And all the aggregates, film distributors, sales reps, they go in there and they study up on one thing, and that's creative contracts. And this is where the problem starts. There's no responsibility as far as worrying about how much can the film make, and then the contracts that are laid out will basically designate how much a producer, director, or the people that fund a movie will make back. And unfortunately, large majority of contracts are set up in a way that this will not pay out to the filmmaker.
Wow. That is incredibly dark. So as someone who doesn't really understand that side of business, of filmmaking business, do you write a contract when you sell or have someone distribute your films, or these aggregates or these sell persons, you make a contract then? Do they backdoor change it afterwards?
And it has happened where contracts have been manipulated afterward, or creative, I call it creative texturing of the contract, where they didn't mean it this way, they meant it that way. So you find yourself having to struggle. A lot of filmmakers say, hey, you know what, I want to take these guys to court, I'm going to fight for my right to make my money. Well, a lot of the contracts will state that you first can only go to arbitration. This is where filmmakers do not think about contracts. They're just really influenced about making the movie. And then later, and hopefully they make more movies, but some are just a one and done after they learn how corrupt the business is. They'll never make another movie. But the contracts are set up so falsely to get an attorney and fight in court for a filmmaker to actually make that money back. An attorney may cost more than the movie is worth for a small movie. We're talking like the small world of filmmaking. And the distributors know that. And they also know that they can override a contract, change the meaning of it, and just run it their way. Usually contracts will allow people to go to arbitration first. Well, that's a setup because most of the arbitrators are affiliated with those companies, and the agencies that pick up a filmmaker's project will basically annihilate the filmmaker trying to sue him. And if you try to sue him ahead of time, they could counter sue. It's just a big mess. Trying to find an attorney to work pro bono on a lawsuit is virtually zero.
Okay, so you would say that the distributing companies are banking on filmmakers who are coming at it from a place of passion and not from a place of business.
This is the game that's played, and filmmakers, they're kind of set up when they go into it. They don't think that deep. I didn't when I got into it. You're going from like hobbyist, passionate filmmaker to business, and they quickly realize how corrupt and how unbalanced this landscape of making this into a career really is.
Is there any instances of these companies possibly breadcrumbing new content creators, new filmmakers into following along for a while?
So the distributors kind of lie through time. They'll just sit there and patronize you, say the big money's coming, don't worry. Movie is like a fine wine, it needs time to make money. The golden rule was that usually about a year is about the biggest earnings you'd see in returns. And that's gone because of the changing market. But filmmakers would just buy into the game, and whether they're working direct with a distribution company, they're also being led down a rabbit hole with some of these companies that say they will put your film out to Netflix and all these companies. None of these deals are good anymore, but they're the same problem. The aggregates, they will play the long story where it takes time to make money, which it never does. I've been around for a bit, and it's unfortunate. And it's easier and easier to get distribution because the content is necessary for some of these distributors to make the cash they need to survive.
Wow. Honestly, that's just sad. Do you have any instances of them specifically changing numbers, stealing money in a way that is very underhanded?
When you look at streaming services paying out a penny, you'd think an impression would pay you 10 cents per view. That's the big question, is if Amazon is selling a film for $3.99 for rentals or a purchase of $9.99, where is the accountability to all that? And how I can answer that is there is no accountability. You have to trust the streaming agencies. These streaming agencies are owned by big tech. It goes down to a small group of people that run it. And so the distributors behind those that pick up content making money are going to scratch as much money from those agencies, the streaming platforms, and stick it in their pocket. That's when the contracts start getting all wishy-washy. They're going to hide cash. There are a lot of distributors that own 16 different LLCs, in my experience, that I've seen, that charge you for poster production, making a movie trailer. They'll say, oh, we're doing press, and that costs money. I'll give you the definition of press. That is pressing a button and sending out an email. But they'll consider that marketing and charge you thousands of dollars for it. Again, no accountability.
They're running off of a too big to fail operation, you would say.
They are scared to fail, but it's going to fail. So a lot of companies know each other, they're going to share information. The resourced information that they carry to make money will be shared amongst each other. These people are great salespeople. That's why they do what they do. They're not really even necessarily filmmakers or failed filmmakers who just love to make money. So the companies all hop on board. While the filmmakers getting scammed, somehow I believe that the streaming services are kind of scamming the aggregates because they're only making a certain amount of returns, and the oversaturation in the market tells me that all of the returns that films are making online are minuscule. There's just not enough money, and there's a level of interest that has been sabotaged by inflated costs for people to sign up on any kind of streaming service. They're just not making the money they used to. People are backing out. Was it I heard that Disney lost a lot, Paramount lost a lot, like the bigger conglomerates lost a lot of money. The smaller ones are being choked out. I think in the next year you're going to see a dropout of a lot of streaming services.
Wow, that's pretty heavy. So you want to keep yourself anonymous. Is that because it's gotten to the point where it's dangerous?
So I'll get a little dark here. You recall I talked about some of these ill-natured distribution companies. There's a couple of situations I've been involved in where I was literally told to shut up and not say anything. The threats were there. They got into violent threats. Mostly like mob mentality threats. And I'll tell you something, when you got the end of a gun barrel pointing at the back of your head, you're gonna want to shut up. Some of these people are not. They're playing for keeps. They want to make money, and unfortunately, some of these real rogue companies, they'll take it above where they'll sign a movie on from a filmmaker and then ultimately charge back losses, which could go into the hundreds of thousands. The filmmakers broke, and these companies are winning over settlements where, yeah, your movie didn't make the intended amount, we spent all this much. Because of the non-compatibility of contracts and having transparency, the filmmaker will not have enough to fight in court, so they're going to have to settle. If filmmakers feel cheated and they want their films back, they're going to get charged at market value for their films to be returned.
Because there's this threat to their business, do you see a move towards being more drastic, to being more hostile from these sales and aggregates and distribution companies?
Yeah, I've had some. We're not talking legal fights, I've had those too. It's unfortunate you got into this to make, you had a passion to get into film, but then it just becomes this corporate money hoarding system. And then some of these, we'll just call them reps, will come after you. And it's happened. It's not in the big portion of news, but there's been many, including myself, that have been subjected to a level of violent action, and it gets pretty dark. That's all I gotta say about that.
Right? I like the idea of ending on revolution and then beginning to start with some of your advice towards independent filmmakers and where they can go from here. Get us on a positive note.
If I left this on a positive note, tell filmmakers the internet is a great source of education. Talk to other filmmakers that have been around for a bit. Learn from them. Study up. Learn how to make good movies. Keep the passion and drive forward.
I really like that. Thank you so much for talking with us.